I see creativity as heavily correlated with both vulnerability and risk-taking.
Love that.
We see this all the time. If an organisation is not willing to be vulnerable and take risks, they will not innovate, that they're not creative.
Yeah.
They are heavily correlated.
It's just like the impact of technology and online of how things can be amplified and also how certain lenses and perspectives can be ran with as well.
Yeah.
I feel like the creativity of our young people has like drastically declined with social media, with everything that they're exposed to, with all of that access to possibility and ideas outside of their own thinking.
Podclass acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today. We are meeting in Naarm and pay our respect to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you
when the students start to riot.
I'll be here for you
even if your coffee's gone cold.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello friends and welcome to Podclass. This is the one about fostering creative and critical thinking with our students, and we are joined as always by Sky Hughes and Amanda Marshall. That's me and my colleague Sky.
Yes, that's me. Hi, I'm Sky. No.
Hi. We are co-founders and CEOs of Youth Engagement Project, and we're joined by our friend Will Massara, CEO and founder of Youth Leadership Academy Australia.
And that is me.
Woo woo. So today
That is you.
We are talking about fostering curiosity. We're talking about fostering critical thinking, all of that creativity piece. We've kind of spoken about tech in the last episode and how that kind of plays into it all. So what are we actually focusing on this episode? Those hard skills of how do we do that in a classroom space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some hard and some soft skills.
Yeah.
And it is something, I think it's important to note, it is something that can be fostered, and it is something that can be, if we picture it like a path, we can guide our students down this path of creative and critical thinking. And we can embed that in every subject. It's just a matter of how do we go about that?
And I think it's a muscle as well. I know for us three who have been faced with every different obstacle or challenge, whether it be in work or life, it's like all you have to do is come up with solutions more and more and more. And the more you do it, the faster you can come up with the solution.
Okay, so here's my curiosity, seeing as that's what we're talking about.
We see what you did there.
I've been a teacher for 10 years. And I would say that I feel like, and please argue with me if you don't agree with this, but I feel like the creativity of our young people has drastically declined with social media, with everything that they're exposed to, with all of that access to possibility and ideas outside of their own thinking. I work as a media teacher and an English teacher, and in the media space, particularly in year 11 and 12, they have to come up with creative projects or ideas that should be based on themes or social justice issues or whatever it is. And again, I just feel like it's this, sometimes it's those same ideas or things are on rinse and repeat, or don't get me wrong, occasionally you'll get something that's amazing and it's a new way of looking at it and it's really cool. But I'm just wondering, do you guys think that are we less creative as
I want to
society?
know what Will thinks before
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like I'm in my most creative space ever, but I don't know.
I think putting the blame on social media isn't right, and I would put it on the education system that doesn't...
Put it on the educator, put it on me.
No, but the education system built in a way that doesn't foster creativity.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very much you go to a school and you sit in rows and all the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not a place where you can express your curiosity or who you are or your creativity. And often if you stand out of line or put your hand up or just say something, you normally get punished, right?
Yeah.
It's like if from primary school you have to line up in two straight lines, and if you step out of line, you're punished. And that wiring is, if I don't follow this trend or if I don't follow this normal way, I'll be punished.
Which is also, and the opposite's true as well, right? With praise and those kind of rewards. It's I was that kid that had to do something and it probably had to be exceptional in order to get that praise. I'm the eldest of four. If I came home and I didn't get, really good reports or whatever it is, like that was how I got that approval piece too. So I think young people are so wired to get it right for fear of getting it wrong or not being awarded for thinking outside the box or approaching it in a
100%.
different way. It's like that's what's rewarded. So that's the shift that has to happen, right?
Well, I agree with what you said, and I also agree. I think it is a symptom of the education space and social media because I see creativity as heavily correlated with both vulnerability and risk taking.
Love that.
We see this all the time. Like if an organization is not willing to be vulnerable and take risks, they will not innovate, that they're not creative.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they are heavily correlated. And so I think
Or they're waiting for someone else to do it first or whatever it is. Like
which
they're never going to be
is
ahead of the
a ticket
pack.
of permission, which once that's been done, it's less risk to take that action.
Yeah.
So I think as educators in our spaces, I think, yes, we're seeing less creativity, and that's partly correlated with the education system and also partly because we have this hectic culture of like cancel culture and judgment, which is a lot to do with social media, which means that young people, there's so much more weight associated with taking risk and being vulnerable.
It's that fear of like you lose acceptance, that fear of not belonging or that fear of getting it wrong and all these kind of fears that hold us back from tapping into that creativity.
And like, I don't want to emphasize the generational divide, but like here I am doing it because when I was in primary school or high school, yes, fear of judgment and fear of failure was there, but if I was judged or if I failed, I was like mortified, in front of my peers and then I went home.
Yeah.
Whereas today it can be amplified on social media like that and it can happen in a second. And so I think that
Well, it's like safe choices get the rewards, right? It's
Yes.
like, if I'm a young person and I see my friend post something on Instagram and they get 100 likes for posting, whatever it is, I'm not going to try and go against the grain and do something different for fear of them not having that same level of acceptance.
Yeah.
So how do we,
I
and
know,
it's all
like,
great.
can I just share my example of this? Is like,
Yes.
I was in the Daily Mail, and the headline was, as any Daily Mail would be, very dramatic.
hook, line and sinker. What was it?
It was 20-year-old millionaire declares war on boomers. 1, where's my $1 million? 2, I'm not declaring war on anyone. And then anyways, but like in the comment section, it was literally 215 not very nice comments.
Yeah.
And 1 nice comment. But it's just like the impact of technology and online of how things can be amplified and also how certain lenses and perspectives can be ran with as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess the question becomes then is like, so how do we encourage, because we know it starts with education. We know that even these people in the comments section, right, on this Daily Mail article, that probably has started because of some kind of formative education that they've had or experience as a child or whatever it might be that's shaped the way that they think about the world around them. So how do we as educators, because I do see it as a huge part of our job, it's like our responsibility to be able to evoke that creativity, to provide space for risk taking. So how do we do that so that by the time they're leaving school, they can be confident to hold their own opinion. They can be confident to try and attempt and put a new idea out there in the world and see if it sticks. So how do we do that?
I feel like it's around fostering an environment where we lean out of making assumptions and judgments and lean into curiosities. Because, on a continuum of judgment to curiosity, like if you think about something, you cannot be judging something and curious about it at the same time.
Yeah,
like it's one or the
true.
other. So let's foster an environment where we choose and model this and encourage our students to model it, choose curiosity. And what that looks like is it looks like divergent thinking over convergent thinking. So, judgmental thinking, that making assumptions, it's very convergent, it's very focused versus curious thinking, which is very divergent. And I think, part of promoting that and part of fostering that is leaving space. We've talked about leaving space for eliciting wonder when we're learning about something.
Yeah.
So let's leave space for that wonder to occur. Let's really create space for classroom discussions, and not just discussions, but also the listening.
But even on a more like micro level, in terms of understanding how our students think, so we can learn more about them and then hopefully like make some small changes to the way they might approach tasks. I found something that really has worked for me previously in the classroom is being like, well, where did this idea come from? How did you come to that conclusion? So I can see you've made this choice in the second paragraph of your essay. Can you explain to me your thinking that got you there?
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, this is incorrect, go back and do it again.
Yep.
Like that's that judgment brain coming in. So we can start to be curious about the choices our young people make, and then that's where that encouragement comes in, right? They're like, oh, my teacher's showing an interest in the way that I think
And
or the
that
way that I approach
acknowledgement as
tasks. I'm building trust. I can now maybe ask more questions, or it's that encouragement. It's like, I love that you've chosen to use, this example in your, research task, because that's, no one else has really looked at that yet in class. So I love that that's like a different and unique idea. So how are you going to explore that further? And like anytime we pick up on it, so when a young person does take a risk, or when they do something that's a little bit outside the box to what we would normally see in a classroom space, really making sure that we're acknowledging and celebrating that with like specific feedback. So not just like writing on their essay, oh, great job, or, giving them a tick being like, this is sick the way you're thinking in this bit, or I love this level of creative thinking, keep it up. But like call out the thing. Is it them taking a risk? Is it them being specifically creative? Is it looking outside the box for solutions and promoting that?
Which leads us, perfectly to our next point around promoting creative and critical thinking, which is celebrating risk taking. And, risk taking doesn't look like in a classroom environment. It doesn't look like, I know when I think of risk taking in my head, I literally picture someone jumping out of like going skydiving. I'm not sure what either of you think of when you like, if I say risk taking, like what's the first thing that pops
I
to your
think of my
mind?
friend Sarah and her trying spicy food. No.
What do you think of?
I think of starting a business.
Right. So we think of the big things, and I think it's super important to acknowledge that risk taking happens in those little moments so often in the classroom.
And on the playground.
Just like
It's-
raising
I know.
your
Both.
hand for a young person can be such a big moment, right?
Absolutely. Any single step out of it, what is comfortable to us, out of our comfort zone and into our growth zone, is risk taking.
I think like Brene Brown, what's the quote that she says about the arena?
Yeah, well, it's actually
Simon Sinek.
Well, it's actually the president, the ex-president, who was the president of the States, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something to the lines of, when you're in the arena, when you're marred and there's like mud across your face, and and you've fought the good fight, like only the people who are in the arena with you are worthy of giving you feedback. And so if someone is sitting, there's a lot of cheap seats out there, and especially, with technology and social media, there's more cheap seats than ever before. There's more keyboard
You've
warriors.
experienced that in your comments
Literally,
section,
your
Will,
250. My
Yeah.
favorite was, did you get your degree in a cornflake packet?
That's
That was
great.
literally one of the
NBA.
comments on that article.
With the boomer humour. We love it. No.
Oh, here we are. But there's a lot of cheap seats. And so
Yeah.
I think when we're taking risk, it's also valuable to have that discernment of, who we're receiving that feedback from.
I think
A year
probably-
9 came up to me at the Brisbane event a few months ago and literally said to me, I want to be a school leader, but I don't want to be cringe. That's the challenge, right? Because if they start standing up or something, or they start using their voice, it's considered cringe. And how do we overcome that as teachers and as educators? We empower them to understand that if no one hates on someone doing less than them.
Yes. Yeah, that you only get, it's like when you start getting criticism, it's probably because you're doing something that's like against the grain, or it's,
It's never anyone doing anything more than you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think too, Will, and I think this probably speaks to this Year 9 student as well, it's like we can't foster like this environment of like risk taking because before we even get to that point where that risk taking, where that creativity is really celebrated or is like really prevalent in a classroom, we have to have that environment of safety and belonging. We have to understand the relationship
trust.
dynamics and have that trust with students in order for them to take a risk. Because if they take a risk and they, quote unquote fail, even though they can't, because we know that failure is feedback as it should be, like in education, and it's just us learning. But if they take that risk and they have their perception of that is that they are cringe or that they do fail, and they're not in an environment where they are supported through that, or an environment where they feel as though they belong, that might be the last risk that kid takes, and they're in Year 9 and they've still got 3 years of high school left.
It's very
like,
thwarting. It's very thwarting.
so we have to be able to set up those environments where they feel safe enough and secure enough to take a risk. And that's done through modelling. It's done through the way we support and encourage creativity when it does occur, the way that we
Yeah.
promote risk-taking, like safe risk-taking thinking, and all those kind of things in the classroom, which we can do through our conversations, through setting up agreements, through inviting young people into the conversation and having a shared playing field.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for us, one really good tool that we do before our big events is like asking the question, what are you really excited about and what are you nervous about before a young person does something cool, whether it be they're speaking at the assembly, and then working through them things and being like, how can I actually support you with what you're nervous about or what you're excited about.
And what you're doing there, Will, is you're actually providing those young people with an opportunity to reflect on their emotions, to reflect on the way that they're thinking, which isn't something that we do day to day. Like as a human being just going through planet Earth, it's very rare that we stop and we're like, I'm just going to reflect on my day and what did I learn in that moment, or where did I take a risk, or how did I think creatively? And so when we can promote that by asking those questions and modeling what a great thing it is to bring that reflection piece in, this is where we start to see that creativity being fostered. It's very cool.
And reflection is one of our next tools around nurturing creative
Look at
and
that
critical
segue.
thinking.
Didn't even know that was coming up.
And there's something we do when we are running events. All of us do it, and we love to do it. And feel free to nick this and use this in your spaces. We like to reflect on a highlight and a low light, because what it does is it brings us to reflecting and acknowledging on the full spectrum of feelings and the full spectrum of what's occurred. And it allows us to identify something that has gone really well and that felt great, and we learned and we grew, and something that maybe didn't feel so great.
Yeah.
Because when we are risk-taking, when we're thinking creatively, when we're being vulnerable, sometimes it's going to feel incredible and things are going to go great, and sometimes it's not going to go that way, and that's okay. But through reflecting on it, acknowledging it, allowing it to be heard, then we can learn from it. And that's really where that true learning occurs.
I'm just thinking about how powerful, and I haven't tried this, but I'm just curious, how powerful would it be as an educator to have your students do like, what's your low light? I'm going to use English because that's, my domain, but what's your low light and highlight been of English this term? And you've got a student that goes, oh, my low light was, getting a C on that test, and my highlight was when I got an A. And as a teacher being able to go, can I challenge you and can I give you what I think your low light and highlight was? And being able to say to a student, well, I think that your low light was when you doubted yourself and you had that awesome idea in this essay you presented. And I think that your highlight was when you sought feedback on this and you took a risk, and that was so awesome to see you present, X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And the things that you focus on aren't those like accepted, the grades or whatever it is, which is what we see. And then we're modeling it, we're promoting it, and we're asking them to think about their experiences differently too.
And what you've done in that moment is you've reframed something from a judgment to a curiosity. A low light can be a curiosity, not a judgment, right? So it doesn't always have to be a judgment of ourselves. It can be a curiosity of, well, this happened here and here's how I would do it next time. It can be a
Which is that.
curiosity.
And often it's a chance for them to feel validated about something as
Exactly.
well. And a chance for them to be like, yes, that's real as well. And I think reflection's huge, because I always say it, like, if you don't know where you are, you can't change it. And I think reflection on how we're feeling, how we're feeling about a certain topic or whatever it may be, and why we're feeling that, and doing that little check-in can allow us to know where we actually need to go, because we want to feel great about it, and we want to feel great because it means we want to get great grades.
Yes.
But where are we right now?
And check-ins are invaluable, and we can use that as a tool in classrooms. We can do that digitally. We can have them do it with a coloured card. They show up in the class, whatever it is that works for you in whatever setting.
In my past life, not in my past life,
In his 21 years of life so far, in his past life.
I used to be a tour guide. I used to take travellers up the East Coast for 6 weeks. And my check-in would literally be, give me 5, how are you feeling? And there'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'd go through like one by one on how they would do it. And that was one. And the other one was like thoughts, feelings, emotions. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? And what are your emotions? And they're just really easy snap by that. But they feel heard. They feel like we care, and that's because we do.
And I've done this in a classroom where you can invite a group of students to close their eyes and show you 1 to 5 how much they've understood a topic. Like all those kind of things, so you get a gauge as an educator, and it's done in a way that's really respectful of how they're feeling. But I also love the idea, and I know, Amanda, you're a huge fan of this, which is inviting young people into that conversation. And so even putting it back to them, being like, hey, we're moving into this, creative task, whatever it might be. how do all of us like to get creative? What gets you in the zone? What gets your creative juices flowing? Because chances are they've had an experience of that, and we can learn from our students what works for them and then actually use it in our teaching.
So, critical and creative thinking. We're big fans, and I feel like it's something that absolutely can be fostered. And those factors we've spoken about here today are all strategies, you know, celebrating that curiosity over judgment, celebrating risk taking, and acknowledging our students every time they do take a risk. And sometimes that's going to look like something huge, like stepping up and speaking at assembly. And sometimes that might look like simply raising a hand in class. And they're all risks and all worthy of acknowledgement. And then also feeding in that reflection piece. And it's not just from us to them, it's from them to us and them to each other as well, and them to themselves. It can look like journaling sometimes as well. So these are our hot tips.
They are 21st century learning skills. We know that these things are in demand in the workforce, in the jobs that currently exist and the ones that don't. And so as educators, we can start promoting that thinking just in the simplicity of the language we use with the students that we're with. Thanks for tuning in.
We are Podclass.
We're critical, we're creative.
We're thinking.
We're thinkers, yeah. We're real thinkers.
See you next
See you
time.
next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll be here for you because you're there for them too.